one can um, start this type of discourse on examination cheating with a recent report coming from India that somebody had a Bluetooth installed in his shoes. Well, that is nothing new. Allow me to tell a few incidences which basically shows the kind of cheatings which are done and the problem of exam cheating. Incidence 1. The scenario is an intermediate examination in one of the districts of Pakistan, and a candidate is appearing as a private candidate because he is coming from abroad and he is obviously attired differently from some of the locals, and he is appearing in the exam. The student is a bright candidate and is sure to pass exam if not get a very high score. Now, the very first thing in the examination hall which he reports is that the desks were two to a person. That means they were not individual desks, they were two to a person. And although the persons had to sit about 3 feet or 2 feet apart, and the exam started. After some time, there was a call from outside, a big howl. Apni apni bootiyan sambhal lo. Booty means the thing you have brought illegally in the examination hall in order to cheat from. So what he was saying is that beware, everybody should take care of their booties which they have. And the scenario was that there was some kind of superintendent who was on a surprise visit to the examination hall, which was a rather good thing. But does it prove to be a good thing? Basically, the candidates were so close to each other because of the common desks and somewhat lax atmosphere in the examination hall that it was possible for people to cross talk and not be heard by the invigilators. In the meantime, a candidate asked a bright candidate sitting next to it, producing a page from some book, भाई साहब ये किस सवाल का जवाब है? Brother, to which question is this an answer? Now that was quite funny. And then, instead of concentrating on such candidates receiving booties, the superintendent was more interested in finding out that who seems to be a better dressed person and who seems to be a slightly richer person, and see whether a case against him can be made or not. And in the process, if case is not to be made, he would obviously get some money. So the examiner, the superintendent, instead of looking around here and there, he started examining the big shoes of the brighter candidate. It was quite obvious if anybody would look at how the bright candidate is writing so fast about difficult questions to decipher, that he is unlikely to be the one who is going to be copying the things. So, and ultimately what happened was that the case was registered against him, and then he had to fight the case through a lawyer and the bright chap, and his marks of some papers were reduced and so on. Although he succeeded because of his parallel examinations he was giving, he succeeded in his career and there was no problem. But that basically shows the kind of scenario which occurs in the examination hall. But cheating does not occur in the examination hall alone. cheating is sometimes encouraged by the invigilators. I was told a story that there was a center near Multan, which is very good for cheating, and probably they had some institutionalized thing because it was a sideline area, and came to know that there is a girl, and several of his sisters are also getting admission to professional colleges, and they always appear from that area, and they have really no difficulty in getting the highest of these scores. Now, that is another form of this type of behavior, giving a slightly better outcome for the criminal. Now, these are called the board examinations, these two instances. There was another instance reported by somebody on one of these social media, that a person who was head of a regulatory body of a professional organization was basically one of those candidates who by arrangement did not give the exam in the examination hall but under a nearby tree, and he stood first, and not only he stood first, he later became a major administrator in one of the institutions in Islamabad. Well, these are the things which occur in the examination hall. Then there is a form of cheating which has been reported. There was an Arab student who was studying in Pakistan, and one day he related this story to me. Now, here the thing was that the examinations were conducted intra-departmentally, and they have this system of internal examiner and external examiner, and the papers are always with the internal examiner. The issue was that the internal examiner, the chokidar, means the peon, the office peon, was bribed by this Arab student. And he let him into the office, and that Arab student, he searched all the 200 papers which are lying there with the object of changing the roll number of a suitable paper so that his roll number can be on it. And this basically means that the practice of the boards in third world countries to stop candidates from writing their names elsewhere in the examination sheet is fundamentally wrong. The examiners must allow that on the answer sheet the candidate should write roll numbers at many different places. I observed that some of the examinations which are conducted, some of the UK and other boards in third world countries, they used to have this that don't use pen, use pencil to write it, not understanding the kind of examination culture which they have here, and that made it a bit easy. Although later on they had these papers whose margins are the various barcodes, and it becomes obviously difficult after this barcoding for one person to transpose as another. There have been cases where there have been allegations that somebody appeared in place of another, even in professional medical and some other examinations. There was one case many decades back, and the body was probably a body of either United Kingdom or Ireland or whatever. And there was an allegation that somebody appeared in the exam for somebody else. Now, that was basically possible at the time. The reason was that the identity of a person was entirely based on the passport. If the passport is a little bit been tampered with, it was practically possible for somebody, a better candidate, to appear in front instead of another candidate, because the number of overseas students who were appearing in a sort of private type of thing was very large. So this kind of thing could happen. Um, with this thing, then there are other forms of alleged cheating. For example, in certain third world countries, especially in Muslim countries, there are allegations that under the influence of the foreign Western bodies, some of the examining boards, they tend to overscore women. So in order to make them participate in the medical seats, in engineering seats, and so on. And these are quite serious allegations, because what has been observed, even it has been observed somewhat sporadically, even in a country like Pakistan, that if you see at the board result, the girls are topping all the positions and everything, and we believe that the girls, they study a lot, and they are less noisy, and they remain homes, unlike boys who are boisterous and they spend a lot of time outside and might not be studying that well. I mean, this is possible. But the surprising thing is that many professional professors, they report that once they are in the professional colleges on the basis of these reports, these good scores, they don't seem to perform much better than the boys. Now that basically requires that at least there should be a court inquiry into the various board results and see whether the first 100 or 200 the marked papers, are they genuine? Is it not that some donor body from a Western world or some other policy is giving some funds to upgrade these boards or something like that, and they just want to produce results which might please them for women's participation and so on? So that is another form of corruption. Another form of corruption, or alleged corruption, which is sometimes lodged at quite the senior level, is the remarkable difference in the passing rate of candidates from the Indo-Pak origin and the candidates from the UK origin in, for example, UK exams, in senior professional examinations like FRCS, MRCP, and other examinations. Now, that obviously requires a inquiry, but my personal impression is that there might be a bias of about 5-10%, but I don't think there is a complete bias. And the bias might be because of the examination way itself, and that type of thing, which can sometimes occur the way you take an examination. Another form of cheating which is very common is the so-called leakage of papers. I think I mentioned in one of my previous posts that I think it was year, I don't remember exactly the year, there was a year even the ECFMG examination of doctors, the Educational Commission for Foreign Medical Graduate Examination, the paper was leaked, and the thing, they got that, and I think they had to postpone or whatever. I don't remember exactly what was the thing. So leakage of paper is another problem, and one of the reasons for the problem is that in the previous times the papers had to be transported sometimes via banks or something to the far off places a few days in advance of the examination. And there was always an option for the person who is holding the papers, whether it's a bank or whether it is some other institution which has got the safe vaults, there might be, because corrupt people are everywhere. Now that was another issue which was there. Another form of cheating is, and this occurs in, and this doesn't occur that uncommonly, is to get your papers marked for marking to somebody you actually know, to which you have gotten access. And this is quite common in the sense that, particularly in internal external examination professional colleges, it is sometimes possible to trace the external examiner whom you know, because you know in advance that he will mark some of the portions of the paper and so on, and they influence that, and this is quite possible, and it happens quite not that commonly, but it can happen, because that also requires a very brisk type of person, a very clever type of person, and not all candidates are that clever. Cheating is most likely to be done by somebody who has cheated throughout his life. The other day, I was surprised when somebody told me a very strange story. I don't know whether he was drinking or not. He was telling me and this chap was quite a major politician at one time of Pakistan, and he was telling that I had a relation with a girl. She was quite bright, and I was basically not studying. I was just a student leader, and when the examination came, I made sure that her papers ultimately bore my roll number, and my roll number goes to her, and so on, and she failed. And this lady was supposedly his best friend, or what they, Western word they call girlfriends, and so on. And obviously he was a cheat, and he must have been a cheat all his life. This is horrific. This is a personality character, and a very unsuspecting type of people. They do that, and from the very beginning, they make friends with somebody who is a very high scorer, and it's their target that to see whether how does the paper which he is giving is handled, and how to transpose his number on that and get his roll number over there. So what I'm saying is that this is a very common thing, and I hope that the incidences which I have narrated are not used for the would-be criminals who are searching for new ideas. Then there are other ways people have cheated. For example, somebody might masquerade as a hearing impaired person and putting something in his ear, and might be a transmitter or something, or even some kind of very nice high quality voice enhancer, and somebody is reading something from outside, but these are people with walkie-talkies and so on. But these are very sort of not many people can do this type of cheating. Then obviously cheating is not always done by the candidate. Cheating is also done by the teachers, the examiners. It is quite common in Indo-Pak culture that the teachers have this tendency of favoring one candidate over another. They seem to get attracted to a bright student or a nice looking girl with a good background or something, and they try to give them preference and everything, and that type of thing. And this type of behavior is sometimes reported quite often, and particularly after the coming of the semester system, where basically the grading is done at a local level. There are lots of allegations of even sexual favors got by teachers, and only very small number of them are removed from time to time. But there are such allegations that now the question arises that in view of the human beings never being out of some kind of spin, or not being able to correct things, and this has been going on for the last since the humans have descended on the earth or whatever. What should be done? It is my view that a combination of MCQ paper and medium length answer paper is a very ideal combination, and it is also my view that exams which are conducted, if to be conducted 6 monthly, are better than those exams which are conducted 2 yearly, or exams which are conducted as a form of quizzes, as in the American system, maybe two weekly or monthly or so on. The reason being that too frequent examinations and tests, they tend to stop a little bit of teaching, and also that does not really encourage long-term memory. You also have to have some long-term memory so that you can use that material which you learned in your later life. And then, regarding the power of the examiner, generally I am opposed to giving the examiner unbridled powers. I feel that the marking and the papers should be marked in such a way that they are marked somewhat anonymously, and they are also there is a system of showing the candidates that this is the paper, and to say that the examination, the mark award, or that cannot be altered, and only the numbers can be added, is basically absolutely legally incorrect, and it is wrong. The correct procedure is that there should be a 15-day period after the examination in which, if any candidate or any teacher of a candidate feels that a certain examination question was not carefully worded, or it meant something else, which can often occur quite commonly, or it had an alternative answer to the then usually thought or whatever, they should submit that over a 15-day period, and only after this submission should the answers be standardized, that these are the answers. And if a candidate wants to challenge a examination, he should be allowed to do that, not only just the adding of the score, because adding of the score again is sometimes useful. Some question may not have been marked or something when it was manual and so on, and it is also useful in checking MCQ papers if something has gone wrong with the pencil or something like that, something misunderstood by the machine. But when it comes to the long answer paper, and when it comes to the short answer paper descriptions, it does matter. It does matter. And the right of appeal of the basic content or the basic thing, it should be there. Because we should not forget that one of the greatest inventors of modern times, and early modern times and last century, have often been people who have not been getting good grades in the schools, because the system was somehow not meant for them, and these so-called geniuses or discoverers of the highest order who changed the world were not always polymaths. They were sometimes having difficulty in even passing their schools. Some of them were just turned out of the schools. And all you have to read is the history of the various such inventors. So that is not a very nice way to handle things. So examination scores should be just like what is called a double-blind trial. And even in professional examinations, even in medical examinations, the current approach of very fixed type of answers in which nobody can give an input in time that, well, such and such thing could be misunderstood as that, this thing or that thing, or to not to give excess and just to say that our judgment is final, is not good. Although there is a logistic issue in that, there will be too many appeals and too many issues in that, but one has to satisfy the candidates. You cannot take the right of appeal and right of reappraisal of something, and if there is a cost, the candidate should be allowed to give that cost, or at least part of the cost. With this, I would say that having said so much about the cheatings and everything, how do we stop cheating? I think it starts very early in life, that when you are in a school and there is somebody around, and the children are just looking at each other, and you try to inculcate a culture of honesty from that point onwards. If you don't do that, and I think the parents should not too much hard press children for very good results. If they are not able to get that, because they will inevitably go to wrong means if they are pressed too much, not to talk of the psychological issues which can develop in such a rigid type of upbringing. Cheating is generally, let me part with a small example. I used to have some parakeets in my house, and they had a very nice colored feathers, which would obviously drop here and there. Some of them were very nice. So one day, I think it was just second class or third class in childhood, and there were few very bright looking feathers in my book, and they were just lying on certain pages. A fellow student girl who was a bit older than us was appointed to check whether every boy and girl has got a lesson. He has learned the lesson which was given, the homework or something. And she came and she started, okay, read this, read this, read this. And incidentally, the 2 pages which had very beautiful feather, they just got exposed. And she said, well, if you give me these 2 feathers, you don't have to really do anything. I will say that I've checked his homework and everything. And I readily agreed, because there were 1,000 such feathers lying in my house here and there. So this basically shows the willingness of corruption, not just the person who initiates corruption, but on the part of those who did not initiate it, but they have acquiesced to it, they have agreed to it. So in other words, then there is obviously the type of cheating which is done at the national level and international, and there is quite a bit of international controversies about cheating. For example, there is this patent system which is very good in USA, and unfortunately one of the things which does not, which has resulted in sometimes slowing of development, is the lack of patents in the third world. If somebody produces something, he invests quite a bit on that, and he's not even allowed to recover the thing because there will be a copycat within 3-4 months by somebody else, and all his research and development would be finished. This is cheating. Then there is, of course, this international things. Chinese are basically, Mr. Trump, he's very insistent that Chinese are great stealers or cheaters or something, and obviously, if as has happened that in the past, thousands of firms, Western firms, they wanted to get their thing manufactured in China and the countries of Southeast Asia and some of the other poor countries, it is inevitable that after a few years, those guys who have manufactured it so often would think of their own brands. Whether we should call it cheating or not, I don't know really. Then there is another thing. Supposing a person discovers a drug, a molecule which has got medicinal property. Now, the we have heard that there's a certain South Asian country uh, which insists that no, we will not patent the molecule like in the West. We only patent the procedure which is used for that molecule, and that gives them advantage in manufacturing these things. And these manufacturing means that very cheap manufacture, because somebody else has done the research on something and you are producing the same molecule to a slightly different procedure, and you think that there is no patency issue attached. People have taken such issues and of generic drugs and the Indian made drugs and so on, and many other countries which produce this type of thing. Then there is obviously simple things like photocopying or um, plagiarizing. Plagiarizing is very common. You just copy somebody or somebody else is writing the thing for you, and they tend to teach you from the very beginning. For example, the elementary schools and junior classes, the teachers have got this tendency of giving a huge homework, write an essay on the Ottomans, write an essay on this thing, that thing, and obviously the child cannot do it themselves. And the parent, he says, okay, this is a typed thing, and you go and submit it, and this is, and he will get an A or something, and the teacher won't ask that how can a student do such a thing like that. And I mean, you tend to uh, teach them cheating from the very beginning. Is part of the system. And once he starts cheating more and more, then you get very upset that why he's doing that. And then you have got all types of copyscapes and these types of plagiarism type things, which are there. So I think that regarding cheating, we really need a very comprehensive type of approach. Cheating will always be there in human civilization. Cheating would be in the form of, there was a recent case in which some people had a jewelry deposited in lockers in one of the banks in Karachi, and later they found out that there was all the things which were in the locker was imitation of the original, and the original gold is gone. Now that is also a kind of cheating. There are fraud and cheatings. People sometimes add an extra zero in checks, in bank accounts, in something, and that is also cheating. And in Islam, the if you are basically, you have cheated somebody out of something, you have practically, you have stolen something then. And if you have stolen something, then depending on various other parameters, there is a very strict carnal punishment, and which is of an exemplary nature, although it can be condoned, it can be forgiven, but and has been done many times. But generally speaking, there is a very much and definite punishment and of stealing in this thing. But to reach that stage, to be morally able to regard it as a bad thing, to be morally able to really give a punishment to somebody, for example, this stealing or cheating, which are akin to each other. Somebody needs maybe a medicine, a life saving, or somebody is dying at home, and he needs an urgent medicine, and he goes to the market and there's a pickpocket who is just stealing that. Or then there are spurious drugs, which is again cheating. They're very nice wrappers or something. I'm told that those who were 20 years back, who were book publishers, are now mostly generic drug importers and drug manufacturers. So, I mean, what a quick change of profession. With this, I end this subject, and thank you very much for your tolerance and your patience.